Holy Theotokos, save us. We will, hopefully, everybody will remember, not today, but yes, in the future, let's do it. I'll need to be reminded, probably, anyway, we'll talk about it. Hopefully everybody will remember what happened yesterday and keep it in their hearts. And yet it's a reminder for us, but we already worship a God who was incarnate of a virgin and who died and rose again from the dead on the third day, as we hear in the Creed. And an event like yesterday, in case anybody here who was not aware, the Mother of God was very gracious to us last night and refilled our myrrh bottle halfway up at some point since the last time we've used it, which was a month ago or something. And it's remarkable. Of course it's amazing. But are we really amazed? This is something that I've seen so many times in my life. I was relating this to my godson on the phone last night, and he reminded me he told me of a piece of cotton soaked with the myrrh that they'd had in their possession since they were married in a plastic Ziploc bag that has never gone dry. And they anointed Daria with it every day of her pregnancy and remained soaking the entire time, and seemed to have even, perhaps, the amount inside the bag seems to have grown. And of course I've seen that so many times. Something I've never personally seen is a bottle refill itself, but a Ziploc bag, I've seen, and so it's a reminder really of my fallenness. It's a reminder of my separation from God, that what am I amazed about? Now it's in a bottle instead of a plastic bag, or now it's in a bottle instead of coming out from the icon before my eyes, dripping down on the ground, on the floor here of our temple, or on the ground outside of the church on the hill. And we hear in all these resurrection gospels that we see the disciples really at their lowest point. And it's easy to identify with that sometimes, maybe. And we heard last night that Luke and Cleopas were very sad. As the Lord points out, what are these? What manner of communication that you have as you walk in their sad? And they say, but he was crucified, and we trusted that it had been he that should have redeemed Israel. Or the disciples that go out fishing and they catch nothing the whole night. That's enough to make you feel down in the dumps. But the Lord gives at his pleasure, which is always wiser than the greatest of our wisdom, and always has more foresight when it comes to our own needs than we could ever hope for. And with all these gifts, for example, the bottle was half full. not all the way full. Which is not a curse or anything. It's just one of those things where you think, surely it could have been full if the Lord had wished it. And it reminded me again of the resurrection gospel of when they go out fishing and fail. That Peter, all these gifts are given to them, one right after another after another. But at each point, the main message seems to be, we all survive entirely by the grace of God. And our whole lives, our whole person is held in His hand to be used as His instrument. It's better if we're witting and willing participants in this. But when we see the disciples, they go fishing, they're sad. Again, they don't know what's going on. They don't know the Lord's body is not in the tomb. He's been seen. But now, what do we do? And they're still lost. And they see Him, and He says, "Have you any meat?" They say no. Because again, they've been fishing all night with nothing to show for it. He says, "Cast the net on the right side." And the hearer, and probably the disciples too, are thinking, I guess maybe he's asking them for meat so that He can eat. Which is, when we know that it's the Lord, it's absurd. They know that it's the Lord as soon as the net is filled with fish, so much so that they can't draw it. They can't draw it because of the multitude of fish. So they're laboring, dragging the net to land, and they see the Lord, and then he says, "Bring of the fish." Now, before they get to land, Peter, and I know this wasn't the gospel for today, it's just things that the way that the Lord works. Peter, as soon as he hears this, the Lord throws himself half naked into the sea, leaving the drawing of the net to all the rest of the disciples. And they make it to land eventually. Peter's already there, and the Lord says, "Bring of the fish that you have caught." And then Peter by himself goes to the shore and drags the net to land. Now, there's nothing in the gospel that specifically says this, but all the disciples together couldn't draw it without great effort. And now all of a sudden, Peter by himself, who left them behind to come and see the Lord, is able, with his trademark enthusiasm, runs down to the shore and grabs it and hauls it up by himself. And it reminded me when I thought about this, this hasn't ever occurred to me before, but he has superhuman strength in that moment. Like St. Herman, who was carrying around 400-pound logs when he thought nobody was looking. And this is the grace of God at work and how he works. Then he gets all the way up to the fire where the Lord is, and then they see he already has fish and bread on the fire. He didn't need any of that. He didn't need to, well, now cast the net, and now they've got a bunch of fish, and now Peter's dragging the net, and the Lord, all probably maybe in the back of their head, it hasn't been just more than a couple of minutes, and he said, "Have you here any meat?" He has no need of our goods. We have all need of anything that He will give us. And He knows our needs better than we do. And so in all these things, you see these gifts given out in measures that are baffling. And even the failed night of fishing is part of that grace, part of his gift to them. Because we can't be saved if we don't recognize that we're not going to do it on our own power. We can't be saved without appealing to the strength of the Lord to help us. And so it can sometimes feel like we've caught nothing all night. When we're in the midst of a fundraising drive, for example, and we see this number that just seems really big, and we go out to the hill and we stand there and look at this place where in our mind's eye we can see the future, but we don't know when, how long. But as the Lord showed us last night here in the parish, we can make a lack or an abundance, and sometimes both at the same time. Let us be humbled. Let us continue to ask in faith. We know that the Mother of God is our friend. She's our queen. She's our protector. She's been up and down Route 1 now. There's a length of Route 1 that she's really covered pretty well between College Park and the church on the hill. But of course the whole state is named after her. And there's no reason why we can't own that. It's one of the only safe places, well, safe in a relative sense, to be a Catholic for a long time in the United States. But now, here we are, and here she is, giving to us freely and abundantly, over and over again. We have to recognize that and be filled with joy, be filled with and no fear whatsoever. There's nothing to fear when we have these signs. And they're not given to us because we're waiting around for a sign. Some of us might be. They're given because they're given in God's good time. And in the exact measure that is needful for our salvation, and when speaking of the Orthodox Church, the needs of our salvation and the practical needs of a parish are actually the same thing. And so, according to our practical need, and for the celebration of the protection, we were given, in good measure, more of the holy myrrh. And we can say the myrrh of the Hawaiian icon, but this myrrh didn't come out of the Hawaiian icon. It came straight into the bottle from heaven. So, which is another sign in itself as well. And the ultimate lesson of all of it is we must recognize that we are always being showered with the grace of God. And that we have nothing to fear. And that we have her for our champion leader, for our protector, our main intercessor before her Son. And it's not as though her Son is a cruel Lord. So really, when we think about it, it's we're just actually overwhelmed with blessings constantly. Let's try to hold on to these things. Let's try to hold on to them in our heart, like she holds things in her heart. And more we're able to do that, the more we're able to hold on to these events in our life, which are real knowledge, real experience. How many healings have we seen? How many miraculous icons? How many sudden appearances of visions? Or, they're actually beyond count. And we must hold on to, even if we sometimes forget certain things here and there, let's at least remember that the grace of God is beyond measure and covers us all the time and surrounds us and holds us up, and is the whole reason that we're all here together, that we've learned to love a little bit through each other. We've learned to care about our neighbor. We've learned to love God, and that is the salvific life of the Orthodox faith. So there's not much to. It's a little silly. It might not be the right word, but it feels sometimes a little silly to. What better sermon could there be than to say the bottle is half full again, it was empty before. It was a dry. I mean, it was nearly dry. Like it was the point where we were scraping the bottom with the brush, soaking up whatever we could, and now it's half full. It is what it is. We stand in awe of it briefly, but then not for too long, because this is the life of the church. It's not the whole faith. We don't sit around waiting for miracles to happen. We live inside the miracle. It's just our life. It's just Orthodox life that we want more of. And we want other people to have a share of it as well. And it's a great comfort to us to remember these things, to remember that these things happen all the time. Let's hold on to that. Let's continue to go as we've been going, which apparently is okay. It has been given some measure of approval. Half a bottle's worth of myrrh for our needs. And even though we transferred the feast from Monday to Sunday, which initially we were a little bit iffy about telling everybody about, and in a way, therefore, the myrrh miracle is also an admonition to the parish not to be ashamed of these types of things. We couldn't get a better blessing or approval than for that to occur in time for us to. Because it wasn't even sure that we were going to anoint with the myrrh. And anyway, it's there in the email. You can read about it. The miracle is manifest, and it always is, always. So let's keep that in mind. Let's thank God for all the gifts of His grace, and do our best never to doubt. Do our best. It's hard sometimes with the world the way it is, but let's do our best not to despair, not to doubt, not to lose faith, but to grow the faith and keep it and share it with people and have it be our legacy. Amen. Blessing of the Lord be upon you, to His grace and love for mankind, right now and ever. Amen.